scene still in progress at one point when they were figuring out their tech.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Um, but like it's like the movie forgets in the middle that what it's trying to parody. It's also very mean spirited in a lot of ways.
yeah. It is. Yeah, um, yeah. Especially like in the early scenes when David Allen Greer is just really being very mean to Damon Wayans. It's like, God, jeez, dude.
Yeah, calm down.
Yeah,
Like when the way the grandmother dies is very harsh.
yeah.
Blank Man's first adventure, he gets beat up and he's clearly bleeding from his mouth. It's like the violence is almost too real for the level of silly they're trying to go with.
Yeah, and of course the entire time he's getting beaten up, he's screaming like a little girl, and it's like, yeah,
Yeah, it just makes you feel bad, which is not what you want from a comedy.
no, no,
Uh,
yeah,
oh well. Yeah,
yeah,
eh, at least we recently had something that proved that that good superhero media can exist.
yes, yeah. So we last night X-Men '97 dropped, or did it drop last week? I can't remember.
Dropped last night, the first two
Okay,
episodes.
okay,
Last
yeah,
week they
dropped.
had the little trailer.
Right. Yeah. So so we decided to go ahead and give it the first two episodes a watch, and yeah, not bad. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that that Disney Plus name is kind of a warning at this point. Is the
Hmm.
best way to put it. Daniel is often our unpaid, poorly abused Disney Plus correspondent, unfortunately.
Yes, I suffered through Kenobi and Ahsoka and Boba Fett and season 3 of The Mandalorian.
I'm just trying to make me feel bad.
Yeah. Oh, and WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier. Yeah.
I forgot that you watched Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Yeesh.
Yeah. I am not watching The Acolyte, by the way. I'm not doing that.
I, I don't blame you.
Yeah. But yeah. But moving on.
Yes. So X-Men '97. It's the attempt to make a sequel series to the original X-Men '90s cartoon that brought so many people, me
Yes.
included, into the X-Men.
Me too. Yeah.
And the reason that cartoon now here's something that when you don't watch something for a long time,
Yeah.
you kind of forget certain things. When I heard people calling the animation of that show cheap, I was like, cheap? That show looked great. And then
Yeah.
you actually watch some clips on it, it's like, oh.
Yeah. I think most people were remembering the opening title sequence, which that was really good.
Right. Now, one thing I will say, I actually decided to watch part of the first episode just to get that comparison, like first episode of the '90s series.
No, yeah.
Um, I think Disney Plus had a bad scan or something because, like, I distinctly remember the animation of that opening being much smoother than they were doing.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Yeah, I remember watching it on DVD years ago. And remember it being looking really good. They must have like messed with the transfer or something.
Or I was having buffering problems, which I heard your boy Zach talking about how watching this show, he decided he was going to rewatch it because he was having buffering issues on Disney Plus for the first episode he was watching it on.
Hmm.
So there you go.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the story basically picks up where it left off in the '90s. The X-Men are a group of mutants who are there to protect the world that hates and fears them.
Yes. Yeah. And where the series left off, Professor X, I'm trying to remember. He didn't
He, he didn't actually die.
die. Yeah.
He got hit by some sort of whammy that meant that he had to leave the Earth with Lilandra because like he couldn't survive on Earth anymore. Which I almost wonder if that was as close as the censors would allow them to him being dead.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
Uh, and Magneto agreed to help his to help see his dream to fruition.
right. Yeah. Yeah. And So it picks up after that, and the first episode we meet this rich rich kid who happens to be a mutant. He's been kidnapped by not the what were they called?
Friends of Humanity.
Friends of Humanity. Yeah, Friends of Humanity. Yeah, the anti mutants. Um, and they've got a bunch of Sentinel tech. Like they managed to like turn some of their weapons into handheld ones, and they then the X Men show up with Storm, Bishop, and Cyclops.
Yeah, and they did something really cool with Cyclops' powers that I've never seen any version do before.
Yeah, where he shoots at the ground and he skids along. Yeah,
Yeah, because like people always forget that he isn't shooting lasers or heat vision. They're called it's like concussive beams. So like he shows this really fine degree of control where yeah he just scoots along the ground to dodge things, which that is that like when I saw that I was like oh they're like thinking of clever ways to use everybody's powers that I haven't seen done before.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
That's what kind of shook me from okay oh wait a second is Cyclops cool?
Yeah. Yeah, because Cyclops was a bit of a was pretty uptight in the old show, and he kind of still is a little uptight here.
Yeah. Although they do give him a good reason to be uptight, since with Professor X, they're treating Professor X like he's just dead.
Yeah,
Um, so I'm guessing that that's the canon is that he's actually dead because they aren't actually treating like they aren't treating him like he got the dog going up to live on the big farm treatment.
yeah, yeah. They're treating him the yeah he is yeah 6 feet under. Yeah,
Yeah. Um, so the original cast is there for the team. They've added Morph to the regular rotation, which I think matches the last episode of the. I watched it like 10 years ago on Disney XD or whatever. So it's
yeah,
uh,
yeah. I'm trying to remember. I know. I think it was like in this where it was like the third season when they brought him back when he wasn't actually dead, and
right.
he was being held captive by Mr. Sinister.
Yeah, I want to see he was like working for Mr. Sinister at first because he wanted to get revenge on the X-Men for abandoning him, and then he got over himself eventually.
Yeah, yeah, and he was kind of I think he was kind of like floating in and out every now and then, if I
Yeah,
remember right. It's been a while since I've watched
that,
the old series too. Yeah,
yeah, that was the season of the X-Men I saw the least.
yeah,
Um, they've also added Bishop to the mix, which so your boy Zach pointed this out. The so the person who was heading this show, one of the red flags for it was that he had the appearance on the outside of being a Hollywood tourist
hmm
to an extent, because he said things in some interviews like, "Well, my experience as a gay black man informs the show," and one of the things that's interesting is that you would almost assume that oh well Bishop is going to be the main character if he does the usual identity politicsy type thing. No, Bishop is basically an extra.
yeah, yeah, and the other thing too was that they were gonna make Morph like gender fluid or whatever. I haven't gotten that sense yet.
Now, your boy Zach thought that he was just coming off as gay. I guess it's possible. I didn't
Yeah,
necessarily get that vibe, um,
yeah,
but it's certainly possible and nothing much to object to, honestly. Um, I will say that I did like how they kind of made him and Wolverine's friendship seem more of a thing than it was originally. Because originally it's kind of informed attribute because they interacted once in the pilot and then Morph died.
yeah,
Um, uh, but I kind of realized that. So I realized that there were a few ways to interpret what he said. The best case scenario, and there's always a chance for it to go wrong, but the best case scenario for what he said about the show was that his experience of feeling like an outsider would inform the show, which that's exactly what you're supposed to do with the X-Men.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's who they are. They're outsiders, living in a world that doesn't like them, which uh, a lot of people can relate to.
Yes, that is a universal human experience.
Yes, yeah.
So yeah, the first episode was pretty good. It was basically just reintroduction to the concept of the mutants,
Hmm.
reestablish all the characters and their relationships with each other.
Yes. Jean Grey is very pregnant.
Yes, very, very pregnant.
Yeah.
And then episode two, dang, that was some top tier Magneto work there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was in at the end of the first season, and then or in the first episode, and then the second episode, they get the last will and testament of Charles Xavier, and in there it says that the school is being left to Magneto, so now he's running the Xavier Institute.
And what's interesting is that it's like clearly he hasn't entirely changed his ways yet,
Hmm.
but he respects and loves Charles so much that he wants to. It's like he's carrying out the will and testament. He isn't suddenly going, and with this mansion, the brotherhood of evil mutants shall rise again, or
Yeah,
anything like
yeah,
that. He's making a good faith attempt at turning over a new leaf.
yeah. Yeah, but then the folks from the UN show up and then arrest him because he's done a lot of bad stuff.
Yep. So he's actually put on trial, and with him being a sitting duck, the Friends of Humanity, led by the Executioner, who has a really cool design. Uh,
Yeah.
I always thought so as a kid. Um, Shows up to try and take him out.
Yes, and the rifle he's using is kind of like like basically it takes away their powers.
Yep. And
And
Storm ends up getting the brunt of that instead of Magneto,
mhm.
stripping her of her powers.
Yes, and of course, in the midst of all that fighting, Jean goes into labor.
Yeah, there's some cute moments there with the hospital is refusing to treat a mutant, so uh, Rogue steals his Rogue uses her powers to steal his knowledge and
Yeah,
performs the delivery.
yeah, right. And then of course Wolverine had to drive her to the hospital.
Yep, poor cucked Wolverine.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's so I think that overall. I hit the end of that second episode. I was like, oh, I wish there was a third episode, and there will be next week. But
Yeah.
I can't think of the last time, like, even a lot of things that seem all right that I watch on streaming, I don't necessarily feel the need to continue on. It's like, am I gonna be tuning back in every week or every couple of weeks for this? Because I don't know how to feel about that because it feels strange.
Yeah. I haven't encountered this in a very long time. Yeah.
It's excitement about where a story is going, bec- because they're remixing a lot of Chris Claremont and early '90s X-Men stories here. Because you
Yeah.
got the Executioner song, you've got Storm losing her powers.
Hmm.
I heavily suspect that they're going into Madeline Pryor.
Hmm.
Um, might might get the origins of Cable. Um, this that, the show seems to treat the that time that Rogue and Magneto were alone in the Savage Land and had a little bit of a connection with each other as canon.
Yes. Yeah. And apparently she can physically touch him and not hurt him.
Yeah, because he can use his magnetic powers to do things.
Yeah.
So I'll say that I think a lot of the controversies about this show, as of episode two, were heavily overblown.
Yes. Yeah.
I- Any worries that they fired the showrunner of this because of he did a bad job are pretty much put to rest at this point. Uh, it probably is because of the OnlyFans.
Yeah. Most definitely. Yeah.
Serious. If I have any, Daniel, did you have anything that you would criticize or that you didn't care for?
Um, well, I don't, I'm not a big fan of Rogue's new new look. You know.
Okay, let's be fair here. Let's be fair here. That was one scene in one episode that became a meme.
Okay. Yes. All right. All right. Yeah. Yeah.
um,
I will say, like some of the voice actors, like you can kind of tell that either that they've aged. If it's still the same voice actors, you can kind of tell that they've aged.
mhm.
And then a couple of them, like Wolverine, sounded off to me.
Yeah, I don't know if I didn't bother looking if it was the original guy from the '90s or if it was
Yeah.
a new person trying to sound like him. But either way, it's like a little bit off.
Yeah. I believe the original voice actor who did Cyclops passed away a
Oh,
few years back. Yeah, so it's a different actor playing him. And I know the Jean Grey, that voice actress, that's uh, the female Commander Shepard in Mass Effect.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
So an early role for what was it? Hale,
Hale, Jennifer Hale. Yeah,
Jennifer Hale. That's it. I didn't know that. That's
yeah,
neat.
yeah. And then she also voiced Jean Grey in Wolverine and the X Men, though.
Hmm. Yep. Well, why mess with success? I guess.
Yeah.
I would say that. So, what do you think about the animation on this one?
Um, it took me a little while to get used to it. It seemed a little kind of janky at first, but I mean, but after a while, it kind of I got used to it.
Yeah, like, I would say that it's a style I'm not sure I love, but it's being executed well enough.
Mhm.
Um, there were also a couple moments in some of the fights that felt a little bit too cartoony,
Yeah,
like Beast jumping into a sentinel they'd ripped open and quickly hacking him and controlling his arms.
that was that seemed a little bit goofy. Yeah,
But that's the pilot. You're allowed to make some mistakes in the pilot. So it's
that's true. Yeah,
now if you have the question, does it woke? Um, there is exactly one thing that I kind of noticed was they described a riot where people stormed the UN building as an insurrection.
yeah,
I thought to myself, unless the UN actually owns that piece of land and governs the people who live there, it's technically not an insurrection. It would be a riot or something.
right. Yeah, yeah. Of course, I don't know how the UN works in this universe, but in our universe,
Yeah.
they really don't do anything.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and yeah, and the other thing too is they had the trial in the UN, but I think in reality they would have had that at the Hague.
Right. I guess you needed it to be somewhere that the X-Men could get to easily.
That's true. Yeah.
Um, but I only really have like a few visual nitpicks, and but yeah, I'm intrigued about where this is going, and I'm glad that for once we aren't here talking about how they disgraced a staple of our childhoods. That's rare.
Yes, that is. It is exceedingly rare these days. Yeah.
Do you remember when I reviewed Godzilla -1 and Puss in Boots: Last Wish, where I said it was so good it almost made me annoyed because we don't get things this good this often, and reminded me that people could still do it.
Yeah.
That was almost here's like that was almost my feeling. Here's like this is almost too good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh well, I'll take a
Yeah.
pleasant surprise.
Yes, me too.